Hello, yogis. So I'm Robin Rothenberg, and I am working on this amazing project, at least it's amazing to me, of looking at respiratory physiology, pranayama, weaving them together in order to help us as a yoga community, yoga therapy community, put together best practices for our clients, for our students, based on science, Vedic science, Western science, to understand how to utilize the breath as this amazing, amazing, miraculous tool for healing. Along the way, I've discovered all these incredible little nuggets of information that have been revelatory for me, and they just can't wait until the book is actually done and into the publishers and out on the shelves. So I have to share these little breath facts as I'm going along because I just get too excited about it. So today's little lesson on the breath, it has to do with the zone of apposition. The zone of apposition has to do with the diaphragm and the positioning of the rib cage. It has everything to do with breathing. It has everything to do with core strength below and above, and integration of the spine and the flow of prana. So the zone of apposition is like this. There is a vertical line between the intersection of the diaphragm with the rib cage at the very base of the ribs where it attaches to the dome of the diaphragm when it sits up in its resting position, right? There's a distance there. And when the diaphragm is in good, healthy condition, strong and flexible, meaning we use our diaphragm every day, thousands of times a day to breathe, 20,000 times a day to breathe. It's a lot. What happens is that the zone of apposition increases. There's more movement. There's more vertical lift. There's more of a dome at the top. Okay? When we use our diaphragm less, as in when we chest breathe or when we belly breathe, okay, the zone of apposition flattens. It loses its vertical height because the diaphragm is less activated. Okay, so what do we do with this information? Well, as it turns out, as yoga teachers, every day, every moment when we're cueing posturally, we can be putting our attention on the zone of apposition and we can transform every single pose. I know because I've just put it into action. I mean, I didn't know this about the zone of apposition 2 weeks ago. It's just amazing. So here's how I understand it. So I'm going to step a little forward so that you can see this. So if you do what I'm doing and you take your thumb and your middle finger and you put them on either side of your lower rib cage, right? So place them there and then set your rib cage so that it's in neutral. This is its happy place where the front of the rib cage and the back of the rib cage sit on a flat horizontal plane, right? Not too much lift, hyperextension, not too little lift, or rather a droop, which creates hyperextension, hyperflexion, right? But that just right middle, okay? Now this is also corresponds very well to Tadasana and the positioning of the pelvis and the shoulder girdle being in aligned with one another. Not too much, sway back, not too little, excessive kyphosis. All right, back to the front. All right, so with your thumb and finger placed at the base of the rib cage, begin to breathe from your diaphragm and do your best to draw the rib cage in towards the middle, which will activate at least at minimum, the upper transverse abdominis and obliques because they're all attached. And then as you inhale, can't talk while you inhale, another breath fact. Okay. As you inhale, keeping the ribs set on that horizontal plane, expand your fingers apart. Exhale, bring them together, and inhale, push them apart. Now notice that you can do this with a very low amount of breath. You don't have to breathe heavy to create this action because the diaphragm, articulation, strength, and flexibility has nothing to do with breath volume. Another breath fact for another teaching, okay? So activating at that happy place with the zone of apposition. Now, take your ribs slightly forward in just a gentle hyperextension, all right? Which is not all that uncommon, particularly with postures like Virabhadrasana 1, or let's say any back bend. There's a tendency, especially in our yoga world, to kind of thrust the ribs forward in this, what we call open-hearted position. But as it turns out, that forward thrust of the ribs, or rib jut as I call it, doesn't actually open the heart. What it does is, find out for yourself. Thumb and index finger, keep the rib jut, forward position, and try and draw the ribs together as you exhale, and try and push the lower rib cage apart as you inhale. Now, question for you. Do you feel more freedom, more openness, or less? What I experience is it's really hard to get any lateral movement in either direction. And that if I force it, particularly in the inhale, if I force pushing the ribs apart, what happens is it gets tighter up in my chest. Okay? Now, go back to neutral. So just draw the rib cage in, right? Which will, again, have more of a neutral positioning, vertical positioning of the shoulders over the hips as opposed to swaying them back. Exhale, hug in. Inhale, press apart. Notice how you can even take your core muscles below the lower transverse abdominis, even pelvic floor, and bring them into the mix. Notice that they're connected and they sync very well together. Inhale, expand, exhale, contract and hug in. Okay, domes going up with every exhale. Now let's take this into a little bit of the typical Western slump. So the rib cage drops down, lower the angle. You can even see it on the lines of my shirt. Lower than the back, lower in the front. Okay. Now, once again, now I've even changed my positioning of the fingers. How much movement? How much movement do you get? How much movement do you see me getting? What I find is the abdominals are absolutely taken offline here. I cannot use my upper transverse abdominis at all. It's essentially muted. I can get a little bit of action in my lower belly, kind of poofing out and coming in, but it's actually not interacting at all with my diaphragm. Well, guess what? Healthy breathing and healthy movement function requires a neutral set of the zone of apposition. Ribs in neutral, and the diaphragm expands, helping to create some intra-abdominal pressure by the abdominal muscles eccentrically contracting inward. And then as you exhale, the abdominals contract inward and upward and draw the edges of the diaphragm together. Healthy functional breathing, healthy functional movement. Take that into our Virabhadrasana, which if I keep my ribs forward is going to force the breath up into the thoracic area, which is actually not functional at all, creates a lot of tension. Sympathetic activation of the nervous system does not free and open the heart, but rather restricts it. Instead, if I just nudge my lower rib cage in so that I integrate the core muscles of the abdominals with the diaphragm, the breath stays low and the space across the chest and through the front of the body is open and free. So that's your breath fact for the day. Blessings and namaste.